If you clicked on this video because you think that I'm about to announce that Shelly is pregnant, I wouldn't blame you, because I am holding a positive pregnancy test. However, if you look closely, you see that this date, the 2nd of December 2014, is a few years ago. And the reason why I'm holding this is because this is how we found out that Shelly was pregnant with Amelie. And yes, I did keep it, and I will keep it to give it to her one day. If you think that's weird, thumbs up in this video, thank you. I've never got so many likes that fast. The reason why I brought this up is because I've been meaning to make a video for a long time talking about Amelie's birth story. And look at that, I've been making a vlog every day for a year and I still haven't made this video until now. I'm making this video for two reasons. One of them, which is the main reason, is because I do not want to forget. I want to record the story. I started writing the story in my journal and then I never finished. But this video have the entire story, as much as I can remember of it, and in somewhat good detail. And the second reason is because maybe you are about to have a baby, maybe you want to know more about the birth and stuff like that, or maybe just want to know more about my life and Amelie's life and Shelly's life. So hopefully this video will help you if you're one of those people. And because Amelie's birth story is not super simple, I'm going to split this video in 3 parts. Let's start with part number 1. Part 1. Before birth. As Amelie was our first and so far only child, we weren't really sure what to expect. We did a prenatal class, which most new parents do, right? Do they? And the prenatal class was great. We learned all these things about how to change a nappy, how to wrap the baby, how to give a bath, how to sleep if you can, and all this kind of things. And they even had a couple of couples who just had a baby a few months ago to tell their birth story. And they were not, one of them, the birth story was not so good, and the other one, the birth story was great, but the baby cried a lot. And we were like, surely that's for them, not for us. Everything will be very different with us. Everything will be perfect with us. And in a way, maybe it was. Depends how you look at the situation. The due date was approaching. Nothing was happening. And let's just make it clear, the due date is kind of an approximate due date because they measured the size of the head using the ultrasound and they calculate based on your last period and all this kind of thing. And they think, well, the baby probably is this many weeks, this many days. Not really sure, but most likely. Shelly was being seen by a group of midwives throughout the pregnancy, so when the due date came, we went to see our midwife and she did all the checks and everything. Is like, yeah, she's engaged, nothing exciting right now, wait a few days, went to see the midwife again, have to wait. So every new feeling after that time was like, oh, is this a contraction? Oh my gosh, what's going on? And then we called them and like, no, just calm down, people. You will know when it's happening. You will know. One day Shelly woke me up in the middle of the night. I was like, oh my gosh, I think my water's broke, because there was a little bit of water that came out. Sorry about that. It was a little bit of water like this on the bed. And we called the hospital, and I think they even called us to go in because, you know, probably the waters had broken. And they got there, did the checks, and nah, go home. Wait. So here came the weekend. We went to church. It was a Sunday. Shelly was very, very pregnant. We were hoping that maybe something was gonna happen at church and we had to run to the hospital because Shelly couldn't take it anymore, because, you know, as the baby keeps growing and growing, it's very uncomfortable, I think. I don't know. It didn't happen to me, but from what I saw. But yeah, brought Shelly home, and then I went to hang out with Dave and Dan, and we went to Café Hernandez. Here's a photo of that night. It was very late, and I love that cafe because it's open 24 hours. On the next morning, hold on, I don't know if this happened on Sunday or Monday. It's all very blurry, but just Shelly will correct me. Hopefully she'll write a comment saying, no, you're wrong. This is when it actually happened. But the next morning, Shelly wakes me up, and oh my gosh, my water's broke. And the midwives were right. We would know there was a lot. I think I even took a picture of it. If I do have a picture, here's the picture. A lot of amniotic fluid. That's how you pronounce it, right? So we got really excited. The day has come. The time has come. There's some contractions happening. Oh, hold on. Yes, we did go to the hospital, but Shelly didn't have any contractions, so they sent us home. That's what happened. So yes, we were excited for a moment, and then we have to wait. So some contractions started coming and happening and didn't progress. It was a bit confusing. I think in America they get people to go to the hospital as soon as the first contraction is happening. But here in Australia, they leave you at home for as long as possible because it's more relaxing to be at home than to be in the hospital. And for some people, it does take a while until the time has almost come for the baby to be born. So we waited a few hours and it was progressing rather slowly. The way you know how far you are in labor is by how far contractions are from each other. You count the minutes or seconds, and it was just, it was not good news. But because her waters had broke, they generally don't let you stay for more than 24 hours until they bring you into the hospital and induce birth, because there's chance of infection, because the layer that protects the baby is broken and things can go in. And it did get to a point when the contractions were kind of close to each other, and we did go to the hospital, but as soon as we got there, they slowed down again. I think it was about midnight or 1 in the morning or something, and then we waited and waited until it was maybe 6 or 7 in the morning, and they're like, okay, it's not happening. We're gonna make it happen by injecting you with some chemicals and hormones, whatever it is, that will make your body expel your baby. So it's time to get ready for part 2 of the story. The actual birth. And I know this looks really messy and not very pretty, and it was by accident, but it's good because that's how birth actually is. It's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing, but it's also a horrific experience. And sure, you find stories of women who meditated through birth and didn't feel a thing, or women who had an orgasm while giving birth, or women who just were walking out of their driveway and then boop, the baby came out. That's actually a true story that I heard. Beautiful stories, but the majority of the stories are not like that. I've never seen someone scream so much and so loud in my life before. And if it were just like one scream here and there, it would be okay, but it was one every, I don't know, 40 seconds, 60, whatever the contractions were happening. It was like someone was torturing Shelly every 50 seconds. We had this beautiful dream of giving birth in a bath, you know, because it's relaxing and beautiful. And she did end up going in the bath. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't relaxing. We even had a Bluetooth speaker, and I had this beautiful playlist with classical and relaxing music. And some of the music, if I listen to it right now, it brings me back to the memories of that incredible, amazing, horrifying experience. Now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't be talking too much about that part of birth, because, you know, women forget the pain that they had and how bad it was because they want to have a baby again. Apparently your body does that to yourself, so you reproduce again. But now Shelly's gonna watch this video and remember. Sorry. Now this all started around 8 or 9 in the morning. It was early in the morning. Time went by so freaking fast. I don't think we ate. I don't think we had lunch. I don't remember anything. It's all a bit of a blur. But all I know is that around 3 p.m. or something like that, Shelly was like, "This, I've had enough. It's too much pain. I want an epidural." And that was after she was trying the gas, by the way, which was kind of making her a little bit delirious. I don't think it was a good experience for her, the gas, because she was really like, she was like Kramer would say. So she asked for the epidural. Minutes later, maybe half an hour later, 20 minutes later, the anesthetist comes and explains things to me and to her, and she's like or something, and breathing and screaming and whatever was happening there at the time. And the way epidural works is basically they inject a needle in your spine around here or something, and they put the needle right where your nerve is, and then they inject a local anesthetic onto your nerve, and that blocks all your feeling all the way from that vertebrae or something, whatever it's called, all the way down to the rest of your body. to your lower body, so you don't feel anything. But that does require someone to be still for some time so they can actually inject the thing right where it needs to go, because, you know, like with anything that goes into your nerve, and there's some risks that maybe they will poke the wrong thing and bad things could potentially happen. So they enlisted me to help hold Shelly so they could do that, and everything was fine, everything was successful, and she wasn't in pain anymore. And the interesting thing about that is that even though you don't feel it, your contractions are still happening, you just don't feel them, which makes it harder to push and do all the things that you need to do when you're trying to deliver a baby. So now Shelly's laying in bed, not in pain anymore, even smiling and laughing, and having contractions that she can't feel. And the midwife is there just to make sure that everything's going well. And I think the entire time Shelly had like ultrasound pads attached to her belly, so they could, one, know when a contraction is coming and how strong it is, and two, monitor the heartbeat of the baby. And every so often the midwife went in to check how open Shelly's cervix was, and they measure in centimeters, and I think when it's like 10 centimeters you're ready to give birth. Shelly got 6 centimeters and that was it. It wasn't progressing. It was taking a long time. In fact, it was taking so long that it started to get smaller, and the midwife was like, oh, this is not really what's supposed to happen. And in that whole situation, there was quite a terrifying moment when the ultrasound pad couldn't pick up Amelie's heartbeat anymore, and I saw the midwife kind of freaking out, and she quickly got a probe that they insert into you know where, and attached to the head of the baby to get the heartbeat in case the ultrasound doesn't work anymore, if the baby moved or something. So, and that all happening like a minute or even less, and phew, the heartbeat was back, everything was good, and now Amelie had something attached to the top of her head for the next hour or so. About an hour later, the midwife was like, look, it doesn't look like it's progressing, you probably need a cesarean. Which, to be honest, is not what we had planned whatsoever. And it was a bit sad because that's not really what we wanted to do, but at the same time, look, the doctor came and we talked and we need to do a cesarean. It's better to do it now when it's not really an emergency than to have to do if an actual emergency happens and they need to do it really, really quickly. Did you know they can do cesareans in like minutes? If it's an emergency, they open you up and take the baby out super fast. Thankfully, that was not the case. But anyway, 30 minutes later, Shelly was being taken into the ER and I was being taken to a place to put my own little thingy. Here's a photo of me with that and a visitor tag, and they didn't let me film in the operating room. They did let me take photos though, and here are some photos. Shelly was feeling very nauseous, so nauseous that the anesthetist was giving her nausea medicine directly into her blood, and apparently she reached the maximum that she could possibly have, and she was still not feeling so good and she was shaking, and again, wasn't pretty. It was not pretty. I told you it wasn't pretty. There's more. So now I'm just sitting next to Shelly and waiting until the doctors open Shelly up and take Amelie out. And when they did it, it was awesome. Here's a photo of that first moment when they lifted Amelie up so we could see it. Shelly was still so out of it and feeling very nauseous, and she probably doesn't even remember this. But anyway, they quickly clip the umbilical cord and cut it, and then took Amelie to this other place to check if she's breathing and how everything's going, and do the things they need to do, clean her up and wrap her up and make her warm and all that kind of stuff. And there I am following Amelie, and I was like, oh wow, it's amazing. That's the moment when it's actually wonderful and beautiful and incredible, and it's all worth it. I mean, I can't really speak it for Shelly because she's the one who went through all that. I was just there next to her, okay? I'm not saying on behalf of Shelly that all that madness was worth it just so I could have the little moment there. But I'm sure that she'll agree with me because we love Amelie and it's amazing. It's a miracle. It's a miracle of life. It's awesome. But anyway, back to my point. There she is, and I'm like, oh my gosh, can I touch her? And then the nurses were like, she's your baby. Of course you can touch her. She's yours. And that's the moment when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm a dad. That's my daughter. She's right there. It's real. Wow. Amazing. And now it's time for the third part and last part of this story. Part 3, after birth. Amelie was born in the Royal Women's Hospital in Randwick, and it's an amazing hospital. It's, I think, one of the best hospitals in Australia to give birth and to be looked after if you're a woman. And the great thing about the hospital is that if you're lucky enough to be in a private room, you can pay extra and have a pull-up bed, so you know the dad of the child can be right there next to you. And that was incredibly helpful because of the things that happened after Amelie was born. To be honest, most things were great. Amelie was doing fine. She was sleeping, you know, normally, I guess. Even though in a hospital, to keep a sleeping routine is so complicated, because there's always a light on somewhere, and there's always noise, and there's always something happening, even in the middle of the night. Not really the ideal place to train your baby to sleep, but she was doing okay. Now remember, Shelly just had an abdominal surgery. She was recovering. The recovery from a cesarean is most of the time harder than recovery from normal birth. I mean, some natural births can leave people in a pretty bad situation as well. Shelly was in bed. She had a catheter for her urine. It's not really how you want to be after you've just given birth. So it was great that I was right there helping change nappies and bring Amelie to the bed and all the other things that Shelly couldn't do. Amelie was also having a little bit of trouble breastfeeding, so the nurses and the midwives were really, you know, trying to show how to do it and try to help, and we had to give Amelie a little bit of formula because she wasn't gaining enough weight or something, and it was not, yeah, we stayed in there for a bit longer because they were concerned about Amelie not being able to get enough food. All that was sorted towards the end, so everything about that was fine. A couple of days later, Shelly was already walking. She got the catheter out, which was awesome. She was still in a lot of pain. We saw so many doctors, the pain doctor and whatever, and I can't even remember everything and everyone that came into our room during that week. But there was a day, it was a night actually, when I was about to change Amelie's nappy. She had just done a big poo, or she was about to do a big poo. I don't completely remember. But Shelly was walking out of the bathroom to go back to bed, and she had this instant sharp pain near her lungs, near her right lung. And from all my extensive medical knowledge of all the years that I've been watching House, I knew that one of the possible things was a pulmonary embolism. When someone has surgery and a big part of the skin gets cut, there's a chance that blood clots could form, and they could also travel through your blood and stop somewhere and block circulation in certain parts of your body. That's why they give people who just had surgery stockings, so it presses your legs, and that prevents blood clots in your legs. If it gets to your lungs though, there's a chance, the worst case scenario is that a lung could collapse. That is, the lung stops working, and that can have some pretty serious consequences. So I immediately told her to go back to bed, and inside I was like, panicking, this is not very good. And in the room there are two buttons. There's one button to call the nurse, and there's another one that is an emergency button. And I pressed that one because I'm like, okay, this looks pretty serious. When you call the nurses, they may or may not come, depending on how busy they are and what's happening. It might take them even like an hour for them to come. But that was pretty quick. I pressed the button, I opened the door, there were already 3 or 4 people running towards the room. And in a matter of minutes, there were 2 doctors in the room. I have no idea where they came from. They were not in our floor. I don't know where they were. I don't know if they were hiding in the toilet, if they were sleeping somewhere. They just appeared. They did lots of tests and checked on Shelly and, I don't know, attached equipment and stuff and just making sure everything was fine. They even brought a portable X-ray into the room to just check her lungs and see what's going on. Now remember, Amelie had just pooped. I was changing her nappy. It was kind of a poo explosion. So while I was freaking out about Shelly, I was also changing Amelie's nappy. I got some very good training on how to change a nappy when everything is falling apart around you. After this whole situation, after they gave Shelly some pretty strong painkillers because she was actually in a lot of pain, the doctors thought they needed to see a bit more, so we went to get a CT scan, and it was a CT scan, to see the lungs in more detail. Turned out, the lungs were fine. There was no blood clot. Everything was fine. They were not 100% sure where that pain came from. But everything would eventually become clear a week and a half later. A couple of days later, Shelly was feeling well again. Amelie was feeling okay. So they sent us home because that's the best place for you to recover. And to be honest, everything was going really well. Amelie was doing well, eating well, sleeping mostly well. I mean, I don't know how well can you sleep when you just came out of your mother's womb a week ago. She was doing okay. The only thing that was still a little bit worrying is that Shelly was in a lot of pain. So it had been 2 weeks since Shelly gave birth, and she was still in a lot of pain, which was not very normal. I mean, for someone who has a cesarean, yes, you're gonna have a lot of pain in the beginning, but 2 weeks later, you shouldn't need strong painkillers all the time. You should be able to, you know, walk and do things without a lot of pain. But that was not the case for Shelly. So a couple of days later, still not sorted, Shelly decided to call our doctor. And Shelly was in the living room calling the doctor, and I was there. I overheard the conversation, and apparently they only had an appointment in 2 days. And I'm like, what the heck? I got really annoyed because I'm like, you need to explain that you just had a cesarean and you're still in a lot of pain. They need to see you as soon as possible. So she called them again and explained, and the doctor was like, oh okay, then come now. That's what we did. The doctor looked at her, poked, and all the things that doctors do, and it was like, this is not normal. It looks like you might have appendicitis. And we're like, what? So our doctor did 2 things. One of them is they told us to go to emergency, and the other thing is he recommended us to get an ultrasound to check what's happening. So we booked an ultrasound 2 days later. But we did go to the emergency, and the doctor at the emergency looked at her. She didn't look sick. She didn't look like super sick. It was just a pain. And he thought, I think you're just constipated. You know, they did all the tests and things, and the doctor knew that we were going to get an ultrasound in 2 days, so he didn't seem very worried. Shelly didn't look like she had some major problem in her body. The doctor just thought, this is probably just constipation. You go home, come back if things don't get better. Things didn't get worse. Also didn't get much better, but it came to the ultrasound appointment, and there we go. So the ultrasound appointment, we're gonna find out exactly what's going on. The ultrasound lady is doing the things that they do when they do an ultrasound, and towards the end she's like, wait here, I'll call the doctor. And we're like, what? This never happened before. So the doctor in charge came and had a look, and he was like, you need to go to the emergency. We're gonna call them ahead and tell them you're coming, because it looks like one of your ovaries doesn't have any blood flow. So maybe it got a torsion and lost some blood flow. And I'm like, oh, okay, that explains things, maybe? So there we are, almost 3 weeks after Shelly gave birth to Amelie. We go to the car and go to the emergency again, and they know we're coming. They're waiting for us. They sent us to a room which was not really a consultation room, because I think emergency was pretty booked. It was a plaster room where they do casts and stuff. I remember very vividly, I was in the hospital just a month ago when I had gastro, and I walked past that room. I was like, I remember this room. I changed Amelie's nappy in this room. So we're there waiting. We didn't wait for long. It was maybe an hour and a half tops, and the doctors came and explained what they're gonna do. They're gonna do a surgery, the keyhole surgery, just to have a look what's inside with a camera, and then based on that they're gonna make a decision. It's a 45-minute surgery, super quick, 2 hours tops. Everything will be sorted. We're gonna, maybe the worst case scenario is remove the ovary. You have 2, so if you only lose 1, not too concerning. Honestly, I didn't know how concerned I was. Everything was happening so quickly, and I had a baby to look after while Shelly was going to surgery. So it was yeah. So Shelly's taken to have surgery, and then they take me to the room where Shelly's gonna be brought after the surgery. And the room was in the postnatal ward where mothers come with their babies, which was the place where we stayed just after Amelie was born. And I was pretty happy about that arrangement, because if we need to stay in the hospital, I can sleep there, because we had another private room again. So while I'm there, I called some friends. I called Jazz, Dan's wife, and said, I think Amelie needs some food, formula, I don't know what to do. So she went to Kmart, bought all the things that I needed, like amazing. I have amazing friends. It was an incredible, amazing experience to have friends support you when you're in that time when everything just happened so quickly. We didn't plan for that. We went to get an ultrasound, and now we're here in emergency, and now I'm waiting for Shelly to be done with surgery, and I have this baby to feed and look after, and it was just amazing that my friends came and helped so much. 2 hours later, I was there. I fed Amelie. Some people were around. I can't exactly remember who was there, but look, it was more than one friend. There was like maybe 4 or 5 friends. Shelly's dad came. It was a lot of people there waiting. And so far, no signs that Shelly's surgery was done. But then the doctor comes in. I was like, oh, great, the surgery's done. And the doctor's like, well, not really. And I'm like, oh, okay. Not really the kind of thing you want to hear. So he explains that they went in and brought the camera, and everything was fine with her ovaries. There was nothing wrong with the ovaries. But they found a cyst, which is something that your body forms around an infection. And it was attached to Shelly's bowels, and they had to remove it, and probably have to remove some of Shelly's bowels. And there was a chance that, depending on where it was, that Shelly would have to end up with a bag for her poo. And it was all this like, Okay, what the heck is going on? And if I could do it again, I would probably have asked more questions, but I was very like, this is all brand new information, and you are the doctors. You know what you're doing. They did mention though that it was unlikely that Shelly would need a bag because of where the cyst was. It was on the right side and on the left. And they said that it's very unlikely that will happen, but they would need to remove a piece of her bowel, which is quite of a major thing. And while I was waiting, I thought, there's no point in me just waiting here, getting nervous. I'm gonna go grab a coffee. I had Amelie with me in one of those baby carriers. I think she was asleep. And it was such an amazing decision that I made. It was a God decision, to be honest. Because as I was walking out to get a coffee in this coffee place that I think is the best one around the hospital, I saw one of the midwives from the midwifery group. And I told her the story and she was like, what the actual heck? And she couldn't believe it, and she told me that she was gonna come later and see how Shelly's going. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But it was awesome that I saw her, and you understand why as the story progresses. So anyway, went, grabbed the coffee, came back, waited and waited again, and friends were around, and I wasn't like terrified or scared or crying or anything. I mean, inside I was concerned, of course. But you know, we were talking and Amelie's cute, and it was sometimes even laughing, you know, to be honest, because what else could you do in a situation like this? And then I get a call from the surgeon who did the operation. He's like, hey, this is blah, 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 I forgot his name. And the surgeon is done. Everything went really well. She's fine. She doesn't have a bag. Praise the Lord. And she's now going to recovery, and we'll be able to see her sometime soon. Like, yes. And then our friends were there, and I told them, like, everything's good. Awesome. And then this doctor walks in, and he looked very worried. And he's like, who is the father? And I don't think he believed that I was the father because I looked really young and there were all these people in the room, and I think he was really confused at what was happening there. Anyway, he told people to leave and we sat down. He actually asked me to sit down, and I'm like, what is going on? Is everything okay? That's the moment I actually got worried. And he explained, oh yeah, you know, she had some of her bowel removed and the surgery is done. And I'm like, yeah, well yeah, the surgeon just called me to tell me everything you just told me in a less freakishly way, okay? But that was it. The surgery was over, and now I was just waiting to see Shelly. And that, unfortunately, didn't happen for maybe 3-4 hours. She stayed in the recovery under observation for a while, and they couldn't bring her to the postnatal ward because she just had a major surgery, and the midwives in the postnatal ward are not prepared to deal with someone who had such surgery. So Shelly ended up in the hospital next door called Prince of Wales. In fact, all the hospitals are connected. The Women's Hospital, the Children's Hospital, and Prince of Wales are all interconnected inside, and I think they even share one operating area. It's quite fascinating, actually. She was in this bowel ward together with people who have bowel cancer or people who have this pretty infectious bowel diseases and stuff like that. It wasn't the best place for her to be honest. But as I said, she needed to be somewhere where they had nurses that were trained to look after someone who just had the surgery that she had. So we go there, and I go to see her, and the nurse is like, don't bring the baby inside. This is not a place, this is not a good place for a baby. As I just said, there were people with infectious diseases and all sorts of things. So I went there by myself to see her. They didn't even let her dad come to see her. And by that time, her mom was there as well, and stepdad, and Lisa. I think Lisa was there. And Nathan? And Maddie? I think so. Please correct me if I'm wrong, friends. I went there to see her, and she didn't look good. No, she didn't. But I told her she did, because I didn't want her to be even more freaked out. She was sharing a room with 3 other people. Naturally, I wouldn't be able to stay there. So I just talked to her for a little bit, told her how everything was going okay, kind of explained to her what happened. She didn't want to know yet, so she had no idea what happened. All she knew is that she went for a 1 hour, 2 hour surgery, and now it's nighttime. So as far as I remember, I don't think I told her just yet what had happened. I said goodnight, said that I loved her, and that I'm gonna take Amelie home, and that tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning, I would be there. The nurses in their ward also managed to borrow a breast pump from the women's hospital so she could pump in the middle of the night, because she was breastfeeding, and if you stop breastfeeding abruptly like that, 2 bad things can happen. One is you can get an infection on your ducts, whatever they're called, and the other thing is you might not be able to breastfeed anymore, and we didn't want any of those. So I go home, sleep at home, feed Amelie with formula, and the next day we're there again. Now, remember what I said about the midwife that I found when I went to grab coffee? Well, this is what happened. The next day, she went to see Shelly and found out that she was in the Prince of Wales hospital, and found her in their ward, and she was like, what the actual heck? you shouldn't be here. And she went, and we found this out later, she had a fight with someone higher up and made them transfer Shelly back to the women's hospital so I could stay with her and so Amelie could stay with her. And that, as I said, was amazing. So towards the end of the day, they transferred Shelly not to the postnatal ward, but to the, what is it called? To a ward where they look after women who had surgery, and some of them were going through chemo and all sorts of things. And the nurses there were a bit more used to looking after people who just had surgery. And that was on the weekend, and the ward was quite empty because most people who do chemo do it during the week, not on the weekend. So they only had like 2-3 nurses and maybe 2 rooms with people, or 2 or 3. And the nurses there were so excited that there was a baby in the ward because they don't usually get babies there. And it was really nice that I could stay with Shelly, and Shelly was recovering so well. But this is what happens when they touch someone's bowel. Apparently the bowel is a very stubborn organ, pretty much like any person in my family. That is me, Shelly, or Amelie. So when the doctor comes and touches the bowel, and by touching the bowel I mean cutting a piece of it and then stitching it back together, the pieces that were left, the bowel decides, I'm very stressed right now, I will stop working. And I will not work until I decide to work again. So 2 days later, 3 days later, everything was fine, and they were like, okay, I think it's time for you to start drinking. So that's what Shelly did, started having juice and started to eat things that were like mushy, like mashed potato, and I don't even remember. And that's when everything got pretty bad. It got bad because the bowel decided, I'm not ready to start working again. So everything that Shelly ate came back. And also, remember, she just had 2 abdominal surgeries, one 3 weeks ago and one 3 days ago. So she had stitches and things still to heal. It's quite painful when I vomit and I don't have any stitches. Just imagine, don't imagine, just let's move on. So day 1 like that, day 2 like that, it was getting worse. We were getting more and more different groups of doctors coming to see her, including some people who I think were like the head of obstetricians in the hospital or something, and some directors, and we were like, what is going on? I mean, to be honest, they also wanted to understand what happened to Shelly and why she had an infection and why she needed this crazy surgery after having a cesarean, because this doesn't happen to people. It doesn't happen to the vast majority of people. This does not happen. So during the worst part of her recovery, they transferred Shelly again to another ward, and it was the acute care ward in the women's hospital. And that's a ward when people were trained to look after pretty serious situations. Generally women who have a super high risk pregnancy or who just had a very traumatic birth and probably need super amounts of extra care. And I think the reason why Shelly didn't go to that ward before is because during the weekend they didn't have a need for their ward, so it was not staffed. But I think as soon as the new week started, they opened the ward and then transferred Shelly there, which was actually really helpful given the circumstances. It wasn't helpful though when I called her mom and said, Shelly just got transferred to level 4. That's all I said. Come to level 4 and you find us. I didn't say the acute care ward because that would probably have freaked her out. And I know that when she came there and saw where Shelly was, she was pretty freaked out. She was actually, yeah. The good news is that a couple of days later, everything started working normally and everything went back to normal. And Shelly wasn't in a lot of pain anymore. And we came back home and slowly but surely, things went back to normal. Just a different normal because now we had a baby. And oh, what a wonderful baby she was. And I know she's not really a baby anymore, but she is a wonderful little girl. And Shelly, wow, she is... I don't think there are words to describe how amazing she was through this whole thing. I had a little bit of gastro and went running crying to emergency to the point that the doctor was like, what the heck are you doing here? You have gastro, go home, go away. She didn't really say those words, but I think that's what she wanted to say. And then here you have Shelly that goes through this madness of a situation, and she did it all so well, and she's amazing. Now you're probably wondering, as we and all the staff in the women's hospital were, what the heck happened to Shelly? The thing is, when they removed some of Shelly's bowel, they sent that to the lab to find out what exactly was happening, and it was not an infection. It was not an infection, but it was such a rare thing that no one actually had seen it before, I think, and it looked exactly like an infection. So the doctors did the best thing they could given the information that they had at the time. What happened to Shelly is this thing called Vernix Caseosa Peritonitis. And this is an article from 2007. This is the abstract. I'm going to read it to you. Vernix Caseosa Peritonitis is a rare and serious complication of cesarean section. It's thought to occur as a result of spillage of amniotic fluid and or meconium into the maternal peritoneal cavity at a cesarean section. So what happens in cesarean is that they cut everything open, they cut the uterus open and take the baby, and everything that was in the uterus goes everywhere, right? Obviously. And at the end of the surgery, they get water, like clean water, not just water from the tap, like actually super clean water. What is it called? I forgot the name. It doesn't matter. And they wash the entire cavity, which is the peritoneum, is the cavity where all your organs are, and then they stitch it up and close it. In the huge majority of the cases, everything is fine. It manifests as an acute abdomen days to weeks after seemingly uncomplicated cesarean section. Exactly what happened. Only 18 cases have been reported in the literature, and all but one are from the USA. Of course, the literature is probably not complete. Maybe other people didn't know exactly what happened. I'm sure there are more than 18 cases, but just for you to have an idea of how rare this is. The pathophysiology is incompletely understood. In the past, the management of VCP included laparotomy and removal of suspected abdominal organs which were invariably found to be normal, or histopathological examination. However, the characteristic intraoperative finding was a cheesy white exudate that coated the visceral organs. The organs themselves were not inflamed. Blah 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 blah. Basically, in this article, they're talking about they're trying to find a better way to solve this instead of removing organs unnecessarily. And as I said, it was not an infection, it was an inflammation. When babies are in the uterus, they have this white thing covering them, which is, I think it's called the vernix or something like that. And the probable cause of this complication is that the mother's body doesn't react really well to it. And as I said, during a cesarean, things go everywhere, and most women don't have any problem with that. But for some reason, some women's bodies react to that and inflame inside where your organs are, which is not a very good place to be inflamed. And the latest thought and recommended course of action when it comes to that is to just leave it alone and take anti-inflammatories and let it run and calm down by itself. The only problem is that because it's such a rare thing and looks so much like an infection, they didn't even consider that as a possibility. Anyway, that was it. That was the complete birth story, and this video is gonna be very long, and I've been talking for probably an hour now. If you watched until now, wow, well done. I might not make a video tomorrow because I don't know how long it's gonna take for me to edit this video. But thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. My favorite comment from when you need a giant nappy diaper is from Silver Show Robbie when he says, I honestly need to send you something. Like, this is getting outrageous. You need something really nice. You've been through too much weird fan mail. And hopefully this time I actually send it correctly. Yes, please send me things other than pads and giant men diapers.